welcome to Long Road Miniatures. In this video we are going to take a look at the Ambot kit from Games Workshop and go over how I've created a series of increasingly ridiculous but quite fun mechanical constructs, sentient automatons that have been developed to, in retrospect, work in Age of Sigmar in the place of Gargants. So here we have two finished Bloodstone Aethanites, which is the in-game name that I've given these things. They, as I say, are basically going to be used as Gargants, as Ale Guzzler Gargants to be precise, and they are roughly the right height. A bit of creative stacking stuff on the bases has made sure that they're just at the right threshold, and as you can see they are mostly comprised of the Ambot kit from Games Workshop. And ever since I've started building these, I've had quite a few people ask me how you get these things so lanky and exactly what goes into them, what goes onto them to make them look the way they do. Now admittedly, that second bit is a little bit trickier and is going to take a little bit more time, so what we'll do first off is cover the height of these things, because actually the main bulk of this, in fact the main bulk of all of these, is just the Ambot. The body, the legs, the arms, there's very little else going on, and I can understand why it might seem a bit weird given that the Ambot is actually quite a squat model. The Ambot kit has two different sets of legs that it comes with, and two different waists, like two different hip joint sections. That's really handy because it means that if you want to make them tall and lanky, you simply stack both legs on top of each other. That is all it is. It's a little bit hit and miss in terms of what pose you end up with on the legs. That's been one of the main challenges I've had with these things, the fact that if you cut in just the wrong place or cut at the wrong angle, you end up with the legs kind of being a little bit wonky, which can be a bit of a pain. But it is a fairly simple and effective way to get that additional height on this kit if you wanted to do something similar to this. So all it's a case of doing is there's a circular joint at the top of the leg that fits into the hip joints there, and you simply chop that away. You can kind of see just there the fact that there is still a groove. That's where that leg would fit where that leg is. And of course now it doesn't, because I've chopped the top of the circular bit off and just used plastic glue to attach it to there. It's pretty sturdy, it doesn't move, it doesn't flex. Once you file it down so it's completely flat, you end up with a nice surface that just melds together really easily. In terms of the arms, there's very little modification that goes on. All I do is make sure that there is a third digit on the claw when it's holding a weapon, just to make sure that it doesn't look like the weapon is floating in the middle of nowhere, and even then, that's something that I've got significantly better at the more of these I've built. The first two that I made, I didn't do a great job with that bottom digit. As you can see, it's a bit chunky, it doesn't sit flush with the rest of the claw. It was very much an experiment that went well, and so I kind of left it how it was, because it's fine, it's a first go. Kind of regret that now, could have gone back and done it better, but the ones that I've done after have been progressively better still, so the grip on the sword is kind of loose on this one. In terms of components, this one, as with all of them, the legs are both just from the Ambot, the body, the arms are from the Ambot. Where it starts to get a bit weird is the additions to this thing. So that is a sword from the Adeptus Custodes kit. That is a shoulder pad, again from Adeptus Custodes. We've got a wheel from the Skaven Warp Lightning Cannon, along with some crystals from the Stormfiend kit. The large bloodstone shard that powers this thing is actually from the Warp Lightning Cannon as well. There's some cabling from the Centurions, which is a Space Marine kit. There is also a section, again from the Stormfiend kit, that I've just chopped and hacked away at. I believe that is originally a gun, but it's been significantly messed about with to look kind of like a chimney to some extent. It's not exactly that, but it's as close as I could get with the bits I had at the time. The bit that I really wanted to use I'd put on this one, so this is from part of a Caradron Overlord kit, which I believe is the Grunstock Thunderers. There's also a Custodes shield, there is a spike that I've taken off one of their weapons, just because I like the look of it, a Guardian Spear, again from the Adeptus Custodes, and a Grey Knight head, and two shoulder pads on the legs that have come from the Adeptus Custodes Alaris Terminator kit, and another one on that shoulder as well. The arm holding the shield was constructed out of various bits because I didn't like the way the claw looked. I wanted the shield to be more integrated than that. So that is part of the neck joint that holds the Ambot head on normally, and that is a spare bit of leg armour. So this one is missing the leg armour at the top on each side of those legs, and I used part of that to form this kind of squat arm that just holds the shield in place. I wanted it to look a bit ramshackle, and that did the trick. Now, as these have gone on, they've got significantly more complicated. Now, when I said these things got more complicated, I was not messing around. I started to get a bit more adventurous after the first two, and this is the third one I built, which has got a lot more in the way of different parts on it. Exactly the same basic principle. It's the Ambot body, arms and shoulders, both sets of legs stacked on top of each other, and the Custodes shoulder pads as knees, and apart from that, that's the only thing that's really the same. Everything else has been kind of improved and made better. So I decided I wanted to do one that didn't rely on the large chunk of stone from the Warp Lightning cannon, from the Skaven Warp Lightning cannon, and so I wanted to do something that used the smaller section of that kit. So there is a smaller stone there. I wanted something that could be kind of like a sort of chimney/generator kind of arrangement, which I wasn't entirely sure how to do until I remembered that I still have quite a bit of Baneblade parts left over from when I built that kit. So the section that attaches to the back of the Ambot is in fact part of the Volcano cannon, I believe, from one of the Baneblade variants. Around that we've got another section from the Warp Lightning cannon kit just there. That is actually from one of the new Necron kits. I believe it's from the Reanimator, which I'd already cannibalised to do something else with. There's a small section from a base for the Nighthaunt range, I believe, is where these spikes are from. It's a little difficult to keep track of everything, but I've done my best. There's also part of the exhaust from the Lord of Skulls, which there's a good amount of extra stuff on the Lord of Skulls sprue if you ever build that. Although I don't know that I'd recommend building that, because that's not the best kit I've ever put together, if I'm totally honest. There's also Grey Knight's head again in there. The hammer is a little tricky because I only had the head. That just showed up one day with a box of bits that I'd bought from someone, and I didn't have a handle for it, so I took part of the kind of spike kit from the Chaos Knights and glued that to that, and then did the classic method of hiding a join, which is to wrap chain around it. That happens a lot round here. I do that a lot. In the other hand is a hammer from the Dark Angel's Deathwing kit, and that is about it for that one. It's a bit more complicated than the first two, but as I said, things just kind of escalated from there, and it started to get increasingly silly. By the time we get to the fourth Aether Knight, I have properly lost my mind, and I am just making whatever I think looks awesome, which is a lot of fun, but is a lot harder to explain how it works. So for this one, I went back to using the large kind of rock section from the Warp Lightning cannon, but I decided that it kind of needed something to set it aside from the other two that already had that. I had this kind of halo situation from an Age of Sigmar statue, some scenery I believe, that arrived in the Mortal Realms magazine, and decided it would be a lot of fun if this particular chunk of rock had fallen from the sky, had smashed through a chapel dedicated to Sigmar, and had somehow fused with this holy symbol, and that is why this knight has that. I mean, admittedly, at the time, I did it because I thought it looked cool, and then I justified it afterwards, but let's face it, if you're kit bashing, that's 99% of what you do anyway. There's also another exhaust from the Lord of Skulls, because having used one, I decided I really liked the way they looked, so I had to add it to the next one as well. Having already stuck a chunk of Sigmar statue onto this thing, I decided that I may as well embrace it and include a few other bits as well. So there's a symbol of Sigmar on one shoulder, there's one capping off the stone at the other end, which I just decided would be a nice touch given that it's already got that large section on the top. I also took some wiring so that it looked as though somehow that symbol was powering part of the armour. There's a hourglass from the Judicar from the Indomitus box as well, is where I've got that from. The sword is a cut-down Nemesis Dread Knight sword from the Grey Knights, so I didn't want the full-length sword. I felt that that looked really a bit too long and a bit too unwieldy, and so I decided to cut it and then kind of take a section out and then make it just a bit shorter and a bit more reasonable for the actual height of the model. And that's about it for that one. It's, again, more complicated than the one before, and that trend, admittedly, does continue. Now, the fifth knight somewhat got away from me in terms of complexity and just being kind of over the top. So, again, it's just the Ambot body with the legs stacked one on top of the other, but there's a lot more that went into this in terms of things that I bought specifically for this model. So there is a head for the Iron Hands that you can get from Forge World. There is a section from the Skaven Warlock Bombardier, which that is essentially a harpoon to capture things that are attempting to run away. This guy is all about pacification and retrieval, so essentially punching the lights out of people and dragging them away, and also serves double duty as the enlarged form of my D&D character. So I wanted to go a little bit extra on this thing. In terms of just random bits all over, providing the power is a section from the Warp Lightning Cannon. Attached to that is a wheel from the Warp Lightning Cannon, which I really like because you've got these kind of runes and symbols carved into sections of it. Then on top of that is the very tip of the Warp Lightning Cannon again, with this cool wire arrangement off to the side. I used one of the Lord of Skulls exhaust sections again. I added two of these kind of Tesla coil things from the Ogryn Servitor kit from Necromunda, which is also where the fists came from. The fists, I just chopped the claws off on the Ambot arms, chopped the fists off at the wrist, and then hid the join with chain, because that's how I hide all my dodgy joins. The cloak is from the Chaos Lord from Warhammer 40k, the Terminator Lord, and there was a slightly unsightly join at the top, and I also felt it looked a little bit too not ramshackle enough, so I added in this kind of control box with various capacitors on top of it, again from the Ogryn Servitor kit, just to add a little bit of something extra on the top. This one is the most complicated one I've done so far. I think it's also the busiest, but it's also supposed to serve a double purpose between being a Gargant in Age of Sigmar and also being part of a D&D campaign, so giving that extra bit of personality felt like the right way to go for this one. Plus, there's something just kind of cool about a giant mech wearing a cloak. I don't know why that is. Now, of course, this knight isn't finished, which in a way is super helpful because it means I can point a couple of things out. Firstly, the cavity in the chest there, where if you were building the Ambot normally, you would place a small extension, like a small neck, and then the head on the neck, actually means that it is the perfect size for a Space Marine helmet. So I've gone for Mark III helms and for Grey Knight helms because they look a bit less completely futuristic, which is one of the things I like about these things. They kind of are high tech, but the heads still look not too high tech. In terms of being able to grip weapons, there's multiple parts in the Ambot kit that you can use to form a claw that comes out there to make sure that they can hold weapons properly. Failing that, there is just a third very small claw that can be shunted forwards or backwards to create the grip that you want. When it comes to deciding what weapons this thing had, that's an ongoing thing. It's got whatever this is. I have no real idea what this is or how it works, or whether it's even a functional weapon. I suspect probably not. But it looks cool, and that's really the main thing that I was going for. That section is from an Armiger Knight, and that is a Grey Knight sword, which I've already built the Grey Knight squad years ago, and I still have plenty of weapons left over because it has a bunch of different weapons options. So that is where that has come from. That is from the Warlock Bombardier, and yeah, there's not a huge amount left to do on this one except for pick another weapon and put some more gubbins around here. That big section there is from the Lord of Skulls, which I don't have that magnetised. I decided that I wanted to leave it with the weapons that it came with. The idea behind that particular Lord of Skulls is that it works for Slaanesh, not Khorne now. It was stolen, and as such, swapping the weapons out didn't feel quite right, even though it removes a lot of the customizability on the tabletop. But I very much do narrative forces, not competitive forces, so it doesn't really bother me all that much. Within that large kind of generator section, there is some flame from some more Age of Sigmar scenery, so that is flame that would be in like a kind of stone pillar with an iron, an iron thing on top. There's still a lot to do in terms of adding extra gubbins to make it look more interesting, but the basic idea of this knight is pretty much there now. Just need to decide on a second weapon and make it a bit more visually interesting in some places. So there you have it. Those are my Bloodstone Ether Knights, my Age of Sigmar Gargant army that is in no way made up of actual Gargants. I hope you found that at least a little bit interesting, and if it's inspired you to give making one of these a go, then, well, mission successful. If you've got any further questions, then do ask them in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to respond. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.